Welcome to Kadampa Stories, where we have the opportunity to explore the spiritual lives of practitioners of Kadampa Buddhism. I'm your host, Colleen Isaacs. I'm from Kadampa Meditation Centre, Australia, and Kadampa Meditation Centre, Melbourne. And I am so pleased to introduce our guest today, Kadam Mick Marcon. He is the resident teacher of Newcastle as well as the Central Coast. He's one of the most senior teachers we have of Kadampa Buddhism here in Australia. He's also a lay teacher. He's really well loved for teachings that are incisive and hard-hitting, and he's also been involved in some really interesting temple projects around the world. So I think we're all in for a real treat. Welcome, Kadam Mick. It's great to see you.
Hello.
Hello. So, Kadam Mick, you're obviously a very experienced and well-known teacher here in Australia. And one thing people love to know about their teachers is, how did you find Kadampa Buddhism? How did it happen for you? And what was your life like at the time?
Well, I found Kadampa Buddhism back in about 2004. Up to that point, I was working as a factory electrician. At that time, working in, I think it was in a brewery actually, making beer. And I was working shift, and I was a little bit bored on shift, so I asked a flatmate at the time if he had something that I could read on shift to pass the time, and he gave me a Buddhist book. And then so I read that, and it kept going like that. And then I found some more Buddhist books. Eventually, I found Venerable Geshe-la's previous incarnation of How to Transform Your Life, in a second-hand bookshop, and I thought, I'll have a look at this, and I found it pretty amazing compared to the other books that I was reading at the time. I thought, wow, this is very clear. It's great. And also, at about the same time, I had a girlfriend who was struggling a lot with anorexia. It was just developing about that same time, and so the two together, her with that. For her, it was like a living hell, actually. And then with this introduction to Buddhism, understanding that Buddha explained that everything depends upon the mind, happiness and unhappiness depends upon the mind. The appearance of my girlfriend at that time, experiencing great suffering, knowing that it was coming from her mind, really pushed me to want to look further into Buddhism, and eventually become a lot more committed to the practice and committed in my lifestyle too. So that was about 2004. And then all that sort of happened, and I ended up quitting work to move into the Sydney Centre at that time, so as to join the teacher training program, because at that time the teacher training program was 4 sessions a week. And so as a full-time worker, I couldn't actually commit to teacher training program. And at that time, 2006, they were just about to start the new book, which was Heart of Wisdom. And so I have quite a keen interest in emptiness. And so I had to transform my life to be able to quit work, to be able to move into the centre, be able to commit to the teacher training program, because it was 4 sessions a week plus retreats plus all the other stuff that at the time. So the commitment these days is a little bit less than that at most centres, but back then it was quite strict. And so at that time, I was working towards my retirement. So I had this idea of how many houses I would need to purchase so that I could quit work and live off the rent. And I was working towards that. I had my dream house up at the Central Coast, which is where I now teach. Not at the house, but had the dream house there, had a couple other properties. And all this happened. And so something had to give for me to be able to study that book. I was desperate to study emptiness. And so I ended up selling the dream house to pay off the mortgages so that I could quit work. The last day of work was the Friday. I moved into the centre on the Saturday, and then the new book started on the Monday. So I just made it in time.
Wow.
Yeah.
The settlement happened just in time.
it happened just in time. So
Wow.
The Buddhas were looking after me. I had that wish, and they managed to sort of rearrange the conditions a little bit so that I could finally finish paid work, and then just from then on, I just volunteered at the centre.
So that's an incredible transformation of about a 2-year period where you went from
Mm.
being a shift worker in a
Yeah,
brewery on the
yeah,
tools,
yeah,
reading a couple of books,
yeah,
building up your real estate portfolio with a view of retiring early,
yeah,
to then getting rid of a lot of that. Maybe
yeah,
getting rid of is the wrong word.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Shedding
yeah.
a lot
Shifting
of that.
focus. Yeah,
Yeah. Making some serious lifestyle changes.
yeah.
And how did the people in your life, if I may ask, respond to those quite radical changes in a fairly short period of time?
Yeah, well, differing sort of responses. And I'll just add to that, one of the pivotal points that sort of pushed me to want to do the whole early retirement and build up that sort of material nest egg was my dad passed away in 2002.
Mm,
And so he worked very hard throughout his life. And, he worked a lot actually, and he provided for us kids. And he retired, I think, around age 63 or something. And then by 66, he was dead, died of
mm,
cancer. And so when I watched him die, I vowed to myself that I wasn't going to follow in his footsteps, insofar as work my whole life just to sort of die and then leave all that behind. So I
mhm,
just thought, right, I'm going to work hard now. I'll build up that sort of nest egg, and then I'll sort of kick back and enjoy my life. But to
mhm,
answer your question, there were quite big changes at the time because my lifestyle pre-Dharma was quite different to a lifestyle um, with Dharma, living in the centre. And so a lot of the common interests that I had with my mates back then changed quite often. Obviously, like drinking, for example, and going to the footy and all that sort of business, all that quickly actually disappeared because with Dharma, I understood also another teaching that sort of impacted on me quite heavily or powerfully was the teaching on death. And
mm,
so within the teaching on death, I understood that this life is very brief. The opportunity to have is amazing, but it's short. And so I don't really have time for all that stuff these days. And so I remember catching up with a mate a little bit into my Dharma life, and I caught up with him at this place, and he said, "Oh, Mick, do you want to come away skiing? Do you want to come away skiing again this year?" And I said, "Oh, no, no, I don't want to." And very unskillful at the time because your mind goes that direction, and you think this is the way, and then sometimes you speak unskillfully, and I think I said, "Oh, it's just it's pretty meaningless." But and it is true from a Dharma point of view, of course, but we need to understand that people value certain things, and that's what's important to them,
mm,
and that's fine. So throughout my spiritual life, I've learned some lessons like that about how to respect people's lives. And just because I've chosen this way of life doesn't mean that everyone needs to or has to follow this way of life and give up the things that I've given up and make the choices that I've chosen to make. And I remember this same guy, this same friend, which I've remained in contact with him. He said to me of recent years, he said, once we caught up again, and it felt like I was being, how do you say, um, um, not critiqued, but almost like if you go to a psychologist or something. You know what I mean? Like,
like therapy.
yeah, like something like that. And he said, I walked away from that meeting, feeling quite unhappy about it. And actually, I think I apologized to him in hindsight because it wasn't my intention at that time.
Mm,
But
mm,
you start thinking in certain ways, and you begin to understand why people act in the way they do, why people suffer and so forth. That's what we learn in Dharma. But not everyone's ready to hear that, and obviously, especially not in a textbook way. And of more recent times, we've got along a lot better than that, because I'm not being, I suppose, the Dharma teacher or whatever, just living my life and being the example that I am through Dharma sort of being integrated in my life. But it's not my job to convert people to Buddhism or anything like that. My job is just to practice the Dharma myself. And if that inspires other people, that's fantastic. If it doesn't, well, so be it.
Yeah, that's wonderful. And of course, you're known for being a very strong renunciate.
Well, it's news to me. Yeah.
But I wouldn't mind if we can explore a little bit more how that works with your loved ones. Yeah, because you touched on that quite nicely, because it's not about you're living your life and they're living their life, but your life is different to theirs. Yeah, but you still cherish them very deeply.
Yeah.
But like practically, how does that work for you?
Well, I think it works gradually in different ways over time. Actually, I think, as I said before, initially we can be a little bit unskillful because we're not really understanding, as Geshe wants us to, the union of daily life and Dharma. And so we can sort of err towards the more extreme, the extreme of renunciation in terms of the external presentation of renunciation, as opposed to the internal mind of renunciation. It's just like the mind of non-attachment to the things of this life and of samsaric pleasures in general, but not to deny daily life or daily experience. In fact, some of the greatest teachings I've received have been from daily life, actually. Yeah, really. But having said that, those teachings have come through Venerable Geshe's kindness in presenting us with the Dharma, you know what I mean? So we listen to the Dharma, we try to mix the meaning of it with our mind, and then we begin to see teachings in our daily life. We see things that other people are not necessarily seeing. We're responding and thinking about things in ways that are completely different to the regular way of thinking about things. So, recently, for example, my mum passed away, was it in January, so a few months back.
Oh, I'm sorry.
And the last 6 months of her life was just a living teaching for me. I learned so much from her actual departure from this world, the gradual decline of that, and I learned so much about what it means to leave things behind without freedom or control. It's such a blessing to be in the presence of a person who's going through that process, and I just deeply wanted to understand what it's like to be like that, because at present, I'm quite fit and healthy and all that sort of business, but it won't always be the same. Life will change and this body will decay. I will depart from this world. But, quite often in teachings, I liken life to being like a flight. And so you take off. In the younger years, there's lots of activity, lots of movement, there's a bit of excitement or whatever. And that's great. And then you get into the cruising altitude. That's when the entertainment system's on, minibars out, all the food's coming, everything's fantastic. But no one thinks about the actual descent back down to ground. So in truth, all flights have to land. Every flight lands. How that flight lands is dependent upon the conditions. Some flights land quite bumpily. Some crash land, but every flight lands. I remember a few years back, now I was catching a flight back from one of the festivals, flying back from Dubai to Sydney, and there's this lady that was sitting next to me, and I don't generally talk too much, And so I said hello, da 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 da. And anyway, later in the flight, when I was coming back over Australia between Perth and Sydney, the turbulence was really, really bad, really bad. And anyway, I'd learned from her that she'd just been to Europe. She does a blog, like a travel blog, and she was in some sort of exotic location, going catching cruises around and writing about them. So you've got this person that's been to these places, enjoyed themselves, and now they're on this flight. It's taken off. The entertainment system's there, but now we're sort of getting into the later stages of the flight, and because it's becoming quite bumpy now, she's becoming quite anxious. Obviously anxious. At one point, she's sitting next to me. There's a real big bump in the flight, and she puts her arm out and she grabs me. I think, oh, okay, right, okay. But she was really scared. She began to cry, and so I just encouraged her to concentrate on her breathing, and basically guided in a breathing meditation, which helped to distract her mind from all that was happening, and just concentrate on the breath, which she really appreciated. But what I learned from that was, it doesn't matter what we do in our life, unless we're actually preparing for death and what lies beyond. Then, if we're not preparing for what's coming, we're not going to be prepared when it actually happens. All the time having the minibar and the entertainment system was no preparation for the rest of the flight, the descent into Sydney. And so too, in regular life, all that we do, all that we enjoy, without Dharma practice, without thinking about the nature of things and so forth, then it's not preparing us actually for the descent to another death. And I say another death because it's just another death in our countless previous lives, so our countless lives. And so your question about how to sort of integrate it into life, or what does it look like for me? It looks like trying to see life without the eyes of attachment, and to see life as it is, as this temporary appearance, knowing that everything that I encounter, every person that I meet and so forth, will become a very distant memory. In fact, from the point of view of the next life, I'll not remember a thing. And so the time that we spend is time that the time that we spend in this life is not time that we should allow ourselves to be full of resentment and uncontrolled desire for the things of this life, but instead apply effort to prepare our mind now for what is to come later in this life, when inevitably we are separated from everyone and everything that we have managed to gather together in this life. We need to be prepared for that, because otherwise there's no one else outside of ourselves that's going to help us to liberate us from all the fear and the panic and all the problems that we experienced at that time. And so watching my mum pass away, I was really, really interested to know what it would be like in that passage of life. And mum had a bit of a spiritual interest. She was a Catholic, and so she had faith, and that faith helped her a little bit to get through some of the bumps. But it was very interesting. One day I asked her the question. I said, "Oh, Mum, did you ever think your life would end up like this?" This was when she was in the hospital. And she looked back at me, and she just a one-word answer was just like, "No, couldn't perceive it." So if you were to ask that person at the beginning of the flight in Dubai, could you perceive all the turbulence from Perth to Sydney? Can you perceive yourself being full of fear and anxiety 4 hours of the journey? She would have said, "No, I can't see it." And so meditating on death, especially for me personally, I think probably meditation on death is, I don't know, probably my main meditation actually. It really encourages me to put energy into that which will provide protection for myself, and to give energy, or give me energy, to continue to help other people to connect with these teachings, which will help them to prepare their mind leading up to death and to help them to gather the necessary conditions they need for a fortunate rebirth. Meditation on death is everything. It really is. Without meditation on death, there is no real Dharma practice. We're just sort of playing around, because our Dharma practice is in the interest of this life alone. So, as Geshe said in a teaching, like the first human mind is that of renunciation, the mind of non-attachment, and being inspired to accomplish liberation. Other than that, we have many minds that are common with animals, such as uncontrolled desire, hatred, ignorance, jealousy, and the like. So we need to sort of evolve out of that space to accomplish actual protection in our heart. And it's meditation on death that necessarily shatters our complacency with respect to the things of this life, because we just think, well, as Geshe says, I'm just a traveller bound for future lives. I'm not here for very long. Now is not the time to be attached to these things. Now is the time to make use of whatever appearance it is. Try to see the teaching in everything, allow everything to inspire us to remain focused on our journey on the spiritual path. And through that, inspire other people also, through a good example this time, not through some sort of extreme example, to also be interested in preparing for later in their life. Because when it happens, it's too late to be prepared for that, because the mind responds in the way that it normally responds. If throughout our life we've been responding or living our life just governed by the three poisons, uncontrolled desire, hatred, and ignorance, and of course at death we're going to respond in the same way. But if throughout our life, independent upon relying on the spiritual guide, we're trying as best as we can to remember impermanence, remember that we're impermanent fixture, remember that everyone that we love is also just like a beautiful sunset about to set, then we don't. Then attachment has no powerful grip over our mind, and then we can see we value our spiritual life so much more than the attainments of this present life.
So you've given us a great plug for your day course next week here in Melbourne.
Oh, good.
On the 11th
Okay.
of May, Death,
Okay.
Advice for a Happy Life, which is a great title, isn't it? It really stops you in your tracks, that title. It's deliberately provocative. Yeah. I think you've given us a sense of what students can expect, but can you tell us why should people come to that course?
Why should people come? Because people want to be happy. And without living and living without death awareness, it's impossible to be happy, because attachment to the things of this life serve only to cause us discouragement, disappointment, anxiety, worry, stress, and so forth. So, it's impossible. People know actually from their own experience that when, for example, when someone close to them passes away, there's like a door opens up in their mind, like a door of death awareness or awareness of mortality. And quite often people will actually make some decisions in life based on the mortality of someone that's close to them, because I think, why am I doing this? Why am I spending, like for example, with my own dad passing away, it was a bit of a slap in my face. It's like, what are you doing with your life? What do you want to accomplish with that? Now, some people will choose to cut back on work, for example. Some people will choose to spend more time with their family. So without controlling our attachment to the things of this life, there's no way to enjoy our life in the way that we possibly can. Now, even if we just pacify it just for the purpose of making life a little bit more comfortable, to lessen the attachment, that's fantastic. But we can go a little bit further than that and use meditation on death to really inspire us to abandon attachment to the things of this life altogether. Just let go of that attachment, and therefore let go of all the stresses, the worries, the concerns that we have, and just really, as I said before, learn to appreciate every appearance, whether it's an unfortunate appearance or a fortunate appearance, but use it as fuel to inspire us to make some really, really, really positive changes in our heart that will nourish us throughout our life. So I would encourage everyone to think about death very, very often. and stop thinking that they are a permanent fixture in this world, because it's just ridiculous.
It's a remarkable thing, isn't it, that thinking the thing that we don't want to think about, our death, when we do actually come to terms with it, it allows us to actually have the happy life that we
Yes.
wanted.
Yeah. The
Yeah.
irony.
It's
Yeah.
amazing, isn't it?
Yeah.
So you've answered the question on, well, I'm going to guess your favorite meditation. Yeah, death.
Yeah, well, I do very much enjoy it because of the immediate experience, the immediate impact it has on the mind. I remember, for example, years ago in Newcastle, when I was preparing for FP teachings, I would often drive to the nearest cemetery to prepare my FP classes, because I found it extremely powerful to sit within the awareness of death when
Mm,
preparing FP classes, because basically, like, practicing the Dharma, listening to the Dharma, meditating in the Dharma within death awareness. I may die today, and thinking about compassion or love or whatever the topic is, it doesn't matter. Within death awareness, it has real impact,
mm,
because we understand that's what's going to protect me. And I think from that, maybe, I don't know, I have to ask the students at that time, but I think it probably impacted them too. I'm not sure, because it would have come out quite, I suppose, with a lot of power, I suppose, because of that that awareness. And that graveyard that I used to go to, there was a couple of main roads that surrounded it, and I couldn't help but think, as I was sitting there beside the tombstones reading Joyful Path of Good Fortune, or whatever book it was, is just like, where are these people going to? Why are they so busy?
mm.
Why are they in such a rush? They'll get here anyway. They'll
Everyone
make it
gets to the
here
finish
anyway.
line.
It doesn't matter whether you get rushed, whether you're rushing, whether you're a king or a queen or a pauper on the street. It doesn't matter. You'll get here anyway. You'll
Mm,
get to the graveyard anyway. It's the great equalizer, actually, the
mm,
meditation on death. So, as I said, when we get the meditation on death right, when we get it in our heart, it has an instant, like an instant sort of calming effect on the mind.
mm,
Because, as stated before, so much of our worry and stress and anxiety is coming from the attachment we have to the things of this life. When we drop that preoccupation, our mind can relax. It's like, I don't need to be worried about that. I may die today. Right.
mm,
I need to look after that. I need to do these certain things. I don't need to worry about it. I don't need to get stressed about it. I actually want to be a happy person. I want this life to be a journey to happiness, not a journey of, I don't know, of stress and worry and anxiety. I don't want to die freaking out about death, or leaving the things that I have behind. I want to die in peace. I want to be like Longdor Lama, as we know from the stories in the books. I don't want to be like Manjul Charak. No, 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 no. I don't want to be like Manjul Charak. I want to be like Longdor Lama. I want to be very, very happy.
And
Mm.
of course, students who don't know these stories, they can come to your course next week, because I've got no doubt that they will come up in the day course.
They might do. They
They
might
might
do.
do.
Yeah. Yeah.
I can't imagine they won't.
I don't know. I don't know. Yeah.
Um, so there's a lot for students to look forward to next week. So thank you. That's great. It's going to be a really, really
Mm.
excellent course. If we can switch topics for a minute, because I know that you do a lot more than teach. Yeah, teaching is a very big part of your commitment to the tradition, to your practice. But you do other work as well. You've done a lot of really interesting temple projects around the world. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, well, as I mentioned before, I was an electrician. I think I mentioned I was an electrician. Yeah, electrician,
Mhm.
factory electrician, and then obviously I gave that away to focus on the Dharma. But then it gradually became known within the tradition that I had electrical skills. uh, Venerable Geshe has this wonderful way of drawing things out to you. So,
These are skills you don't know you have, right, Kadam Mick?
that's entirely true. Yes. So I helped a little bit with the school project back in Tara, I think it was 2011. And from that, there's more opportunities came. So I did some work at Manjushri with upgrades in the fire alarm system. There was work in Sheffield as well, back at Manjushri for stints of time. Last year, I was there for 6 months helping with the upgrade project at Manjushri, which I believe is probably still going. It's so wonderful to see so much energy being put into Manjushri because, as it's known, is like the mother centre of the tradition, and so much material resources were coming into Manjushri, but just like a mum, would be passed on to other centres throughout the world. And so it was really nice actually to turn up to Manjushri a couple of years ago and to see that this energy was being put into Manjushri. And I think for anyone that's been there the last couple of years, or last year in particular, would have noticed some huge changes at Manjushri. So I'm very lucky to have had the opportunity to help in little ways like that. But there are some really, how do you say, unsung heroes in the maintenance world, in the Kadampa tradition, that you won't see on podcasts like this. You won't see sitting on the thrones, but they're just in a workshop. They're on building sites before people even turn up. So I take my hat off to those people because they really are the unsung heroes.
Mm. And that's the amazing thing about this tradition, isn't it? That everyone is a volunteer. This
Yeah,
incredible tradition, which is around the world, temples around the world, all possible because of the efforts of volunteers.
yeah,
From the most senior person down to people that, as you say, we never see.
yeah.
Yeah, it's remarkable that it not only that it works, but it flourishes.
Yeah, I think it's just because of the good intention behind people. That's where the power, the energy comes from, isn't it? People just want to be a part of this mechanism to benefit people in this world. It's something that Venerable Geshe has obviously shown the example of, and so
Mm.
we're just trying to follow in his footsteps to whatever degree we can, according to our own capacity, our own skills, the time that we have. So, in general, in Dharma centres, there's jobs for everyone. If anyone wants a little thing to do, whether it's make a cup of tea after classes for people, whether it's to build a new temple, whether it's to teach, whether it's to not so formally teach, but to be a living teacher as a parent, or a living teacher at work or whatever, not necessarily saying the Dharma words from our mouth, but showing through our actions the power of Dharma in life, and showing people that there is a different way of life that will lead to true happiness. Just to plant that positive seed of doubt in people's minds. It doesn't have to be like it is for everyone else. We
Hmm.
can choose a different way. I can try to find happiness from a different source. I can be one of the brave few that makes that decision to go into my heart, as opposed to going out there and trying to manipulate the world to conform to my wishes, so to speak. It's to be honest, it's quite incredible good fortune that we have to have the teachings that we have, the opportunities that we have, all the conditions that we have in this tradition. We really are. The fortune that we have is unsurpassed. It really is.
You're right. Yes,
Mm.
absolutely is. What about students who may be a little bit nervous about coming to a class? Maybe like you, they read some books, or they've seen some leaflets and there's an interest, but they're just not sure if they're ready to take that leap. What would you say to students who are feeling that way, prospective students?
I would say just come along. I think just come along, try it, because the people that you meet at the class are going to be nice people anyway. People
Mhm.
that especially the assistants are so important at the class, like the first point of contact for people. So generally speaking, the assistants are all nice people. So
Mhm.
that's nice. And generally speaking, the teachers are nice people too. And so they're going to meet nice people. They're not having to do anything as such. They're not having to get up and talk about things to other people or whatever. They can just sit there. They can just allow the teaching to wash over their minds. They can take whatever they want from it, out of it, whatever they want from it. They're not being coerced in any way to become a Buddhist. As Venerable Geshe, I believe what Venerable Geshe said once, he said, he was questioning if he wanted to convert everyone to Buddhism. He said, no, I just want to make people happy. And I think that's the general attitude of this tradition, obviously. We just want to help people to be happy. We want to help people to solve their problems through Dharma practice. So that's the uncommon quality, isn't it? Because a lot of people have a good heart and they want to help people to be happy and solve their problems, but they have a different method to do it. We have a very special method to do that in this tradition, to practice Buddha's teachings, practice Tsongkhapa's teachings, our spiritual guides' teachings, to help find that happiness and solve our problems. So, as Geshe says, everyone is welcome. And I think that's the general attitude that we have as Kadampas. Everyone is welcome, and take out of it what you want. And if you want to come back, you can come back. There's no problem.
That's wonderful. Thank you. Thank you. Well, Kadam Mick, thanks for being one of, among the brave few who are choosing to find happiness in a different way and also help others to do the same. Yeah, so students here in Melbourne can come to your day course next week on the 11th of May. I know I'll look forward to hearing your teachings the next time you're teaching in Australia, and I get the opportunity to, so thank you very much. And thanks for being our guest today on Kadampa Stories. It's been a real pleasure.
Yeah, thank you.